everyone, welcome to the program. This is Sunday Politics, live on Channels Television. I am Sean Kimale, right here in Abuja. Well, let's tell you that a lot of things are happening, and over the weekend, a lot of activities have also happened. One that should worry anyone, especially the security situation in nearby Benin Republic. But let's tell you what's happening on our home soil before we get into all of that. Nigeria's National Security Advisor, Nuhu Badu, has hosted a high-level delegation from the United States Congress at his office in Abuja. It's a follow-up to last month's strategic security talks in Washington, D.C. The visiting team, led by senior members of the U.S. House of Representatives, including lawmakers like Mario Diaz-Balart, also Juan Ciscomani and Riley Moore. Their visit underscores rising international concern over security challenges and across West Africa, and what we're seeing, which is now growing concern for Washington's interest in global politics and what's happening on Nigeria's soil and the role they will be playing in stabilizing the region. At the meeting, Mr. Abadu reaffirmed Nigeria's readiness to deepen cooperation with the United States in counterterrorism operations, regional stability initiatives, and broader security partnership programs. The presence of the U.S. ambassador to Nigeria, Richard Mills, further signaled Washington's commitment. Officials on both sides said discussions were productive, forward-looking, and aimed at building a more coordinated security architecture. This engagement, they say, is now evolving into a partnership grounded in assistance, shared strategy, and strengthened diplomatic support between the two nations. Tonight, I'll be bringing you insight into what a possible coup situation would have been, not only for West Africa, but for Nigeria. We've seen this happen over a time and again in West Africa, on the African continent, a growing trend and love for coup within the military ranks in these countries, and what these mean, the jeopardy it might have for democracy and its development in Africa. Now, there is, in the security landscape, there is a growing and evolving and renewed concerns over rising banditry and communal violence and cross-border threats spreading across parts of the Nigerian north. It was against this backdrop that northern governors and traditional rulers convened a high-level security meeting in Kaduna State. They were seeking stronger regional collaboration and a unified strategy to confront the deepening challenges. The gathering, which brought together political leaders, monarchs, and security experts, reviewed intelligence reports, assessed the growing impact of armed groups, and agreed on fresh measures aimed at strengthening community-based security, intelligence sharing, and joint operations across state lines. The discussions also touched on attempted coup. Our conversation tonight will be touching on attempted coup in neighboring Benin Republic and what the ripple effect could mean for regional stability, especially for Nigeria's northwest corridor and the broader ECOWAS space. Added to these were concerns over recent diplomatic tensions with the United States following allegations of religiously targeted killings, claims Nigerian authorities instead are politically motivated and not backed by evidence. Our conversation will be in two parts. First part will be with the governor of Nasarawa State, Engineer Abdullahi Sule, to unpack some of these resolutions they made in Kaduna. Then I'll be speaking with a pioneer director of media operations at the Defense Headquarters, Major General John Enesha, will be joining me on the program also. Let me speak with Governor Abdullahi Sule, who is live for us from the capital of Nasarawa State in Lafia. Governor Sule, thank you so much indeed for joining us tonight.
Thank you very much, Sean. Thank you so much for having me.
First and foremost, I think we should begin our conversation with, and I think that I know that governors in parts of Nigeria have come together to say it's a good thing to have women participate more in politics. But I've made it a business of mine within the next few days until the voting happens in the National Assembly that we get the buy-in and the commitment of political leaders and leadership in this country on how that voting will go. And I'm talking about the special seats for women in the National Assembly. I'm guessing that you are also a governor for women.
Well, at the last meeting of the Nigerian Governors Forum, not even the progressive or northern governors, the entire Nigerian Governors Forum meeting that we had in Abuja, it was one of the items in our communique. The governors unanimously support the bill, that is promoting the participation of women and giving women special consideration, giving women special seats. When you say I'm governor for women, a lot of people may not understand. During my administration is one actually for the first time, we have a vice chancellor of our state university being a woman. We have the CJ for the first time being a woman in the state. We have also a woman being the rector of the polytechnic, that for state polytechnic. And then we have women actually holding some of the key positions in the state, so there that we have, human capital development, and so many of them. In fact, in the House of Assembly, Nasarawa is one of the houses of assembly that has a woman, in the house. So I also did something, which we didn't have before. And at all our the local government elections, we ensured that for every local government, there are women councillors, in it. So we already started in Nasarawa State, that this is a position of all the governors at the last governors meeting, that women, we should support that bill, and we should go ahead.
So, perhaps what some of you, especially as a leader, a governor, will be doing is also to be speaking with Nasarawa lawmakers representing in the National Assembly to say they need to also look in the way of voting in that direction. Is this something they are willing to do?
Yeah, well, definitely. I think that's the whole idea of the governors coming together to support the bill. When we say the governors support the bill, that means the governors also will talk to other stakeholders, in the state, including the members of the National Assembly, members of the State Assembly, and others, who have some influence, some of the ministers.
Governor Abdullahi Sule there speaking on the essence and the reason, the need for the voting in support of special bills to happen. As soon as we get the connection back, we'll be able to reconnect with Governor Abdullahi Sule. But let me tell you what is happening on the continent. Benin, that's Benin Republic, just nearby. The government says it has thwarted an attempted coup after a group of soldiers appeared on the state television early today, claiming to have removed President Patrice Talon from office. The mutineers, calling themselves the Military Committee for Refundation, accused the government of mishandling security in northern Benin and neglecting fallen soldiers. But authorities insist the situation is now under control, with the regular army reclaiming key installations in Cotonou. Gunfire was reported near the presidency and access roads were briefly blocked, though much of the city returned to routine as the day progressed. ECOWAS has condemned the attempted takeover as, quote, unconstitutional and a direct threat to regional stability. The Nigerian government has condemned in the strongest possible terms the attempted forcible seizure of power in the neighboring Benin Republic earlier today, and in a swift response, the presidency announced that Talon remained safe and that loyalist forces had reasserted control over the situation. This latest unrest adds to a troubling pattern across West Africa, where several countries, including Niger, Burkina Faso, Mali, Guinea, and most recently Guinea-Bissau, have experienced coups for attempted military intervention. It also raises fresh concerns and questions about governance, security, management, and democratic resilience across the region. I understand that the governor is back with us. Your Excellency, these are not a good time when military and soldiers are now thirsty for takeover. And we've seen this happening. It's becoming a trend now. And it's also part of the security concerns that is growing not only in Nigeria, but across the region. And the reason why some of you and your colleagues met in Kaduna. But what would you say is a major outcome of that meeting and then Nigerians should be looking forward to implementation?
I think the meeting in Kaduna were able to achieve at least 4 major things that we were not achieving in the past. One is that we took a decision that instead of continuously looking forward to the federal government, to come to the rescue and do one or two things for that, we say, you know what, we have to take it upon ourselves to see that we continue to support this security. Apart from what we usually do in the state, we have to come collectively and do something. And that is when we took the decision that every state of the 19 states will be contributing 1 billion naira every month for the next 12 months. That is 19 billion every month until we are able to achieve that. And we are going to introduce technology in whatever we are doing. We are going to hire our own more vigilante, get them more trained, get the equipment, get the logistics, and all it takes. Now, in addition to that, we came up again with another option. The issue of what is the cause of most of these problems is mining. So since mining is under the federation, the federal government, we say we are asking Mr. President to instruct that mining activities, as a whole, shall be halted until we are able to verify, which was our authentic. The reason why we said that is a lot of these mining licenses that are given, some of them are just exploration.
The network there is
exploration license. People go ahead and start mining straight away, and then that's where illegal mining comes in. So that is the reason why we also introduced that. And finally, we were able to even have a DG and then the management of the Northern Governors Forum. So we also, when it was in the country, who is well known for that. That is Ezekiel Gomez, someone so we employed him, who is going to put together a team that will be driving most of this work that we are doing. So those are the kinds of decisions that we have taken. So rather than just looking forward to the federal government, we said, no, we have to collectively take a decision and start looking at these things as other meetings we have had.
But this mining, what is the relationship with mining and this insecurity in northern Nigeria?
You see, because mining is is an economic thing for them. Due to the economic challenges in the country, people find it easier to make money from mining sites. Especially when they have not invested anything. That's why they call it illegal mining. So people just think that since they have the opportunity of having these minerals in their backyard, they can just go and get some equipment, here and start digging, and they will be able to get lead, zinc, precious metals, and all what have you, including lithium and the rest of that, and people sell them. In the process of a rush for that is where you now have a lot of criminals that go and hide under that and then go and start committing all kinds of crimes. And in Nasarawa State, we have so many of them. That's the reason why we came up with that idea, with that bill, that whoever is processed with mining in Nasarawa State should also be processing also in Nasarawa State. Those are the kinds of things that we have done. But, it is not the same in every part of the country. The governor of Zamfara mentioned that one of the most difficult areas to go is the area where there is gold mining, and there are all kinds of speculations, about those sites where they see helicopters coming to the site from only God knows where, and those kind of things. But, the moment we say there is all these licenses are going to be drawn, then we can now take a decision to say that we can send some kind of technology on those kind of areas, because today you have all this equipment that can carry bomb to go and bomb a particular place that are not manned whatsoever. So at the moment somebody has a license, legitimate license, you can go and start bombing them and doing those kind of things. So that's the idea. Mining site is usually a criminal site. That's in most cases. When I say mining site, I mean illegal mining sites.
But I mean, there are those who are asking questions. Who are these people? Because if you have identified it as leaders, in northern Nigeria. Governor Sule, let me tell you what people are saying on the street. They think that their leaders in northern Nigeria, as well as in some part of the country, have failed them. The insecurity they were saying, they're seeing it as a systemic failure over the years, and how leaders have consistently, used poverty and lack of governance, and which has fueled this insecurity. And those who think, who are those behind this? Why is it difficult to name names? Why is it difficult to be able to prosecute these people? In the real sense of it, has it been communicated to the president? How do you hope to ensure the implementation of some of these positions that you have? Interestingly, the traditional rulers who are closer to the grassroots governance are there within that meeting. And the governors, if they're coming forward to say, this is a problem of our region, that means we have some kind of solution, isn't it?
Foremost, you can't stop people from saying what they want to say on the streets. And when you are running a government, you just have to take a decision and do what you believe very strongly is good for your own people, irrespective of what people say. You can't run a government just based on what people say on the streets. People will always talk on the streets, so that shouldn't be part of what you have to say. But you have to look at the realities on ground and take that decision. There is no ambiguity whatsoever. It is indeed a fact that most of these mining sites, you have people that are in Nigeria to come to mining sites. Nobody can actually argue that, irrespective of what anybody says. So they have licenses, and the licenses they are given those licenses by the Federal Ministry of Solid Minerals. So we are saying we withdraw those licenses, because right now, all it takes for you to have a license is to go to your community and have the so-called consent letter. If you have a consent letter, that's a requirement, to go and get an exploration license. And most of those licenses are exploration licenses. They are not even mining licenses. But because it is very difficult for the ministry to come and monitor whether somebody is exploring or somebody is mining, So you have so many people who have only exploration license and they are trying to do. So we say, no, let us engage. Let the federal government and the state government, in this case, verify those licenses and we can identify. Something I shown, a good example will be if somebody says, stop all mining, because I had somebody who says, the governor says, stop all mining activities. I said, the person doesn't even know what they are talking about. Because if you stop that, take Benue, for instance. Benue has a cement plant. The cement plant has a quarry. From that quarry, you have to mine. You mine the limestone before you bring it to the plant to do. So we can say, for instance, stop mining of that, because that's a legitimate business that is running. And you have all of them in the country. And that's the reason why today you don't import cement. Every one of these cement plants, whether it is Ashaka or Bajana or Ibeshe, or every one of them, has mining sites. So those are not the ones we are talking about.
Sule, Governor Sule, please give me a moment. So some good news, sharing news, some breaking news that we are following right here. We've gotten exclusively on China's television. Breaking news right for you right now. Federal government has secured the release of abducted 100 school children abducted in their school at the St. Mary's Catholic School in Papiri, Niger State. Breaking news, the federal government has secured, and security operatives have now secured the release of 100 out of the over 300 or so school children abducted in their school at the St. Mary's Catholic School in Papiri, Niger State. The school attack happened earlier this month, leaving parents and Nigerians at large wondering the release and when the return of these school kids will be. So, but we can break for you right here, right now on China's television, exclusive. Niger school kids, 100 of them have now been released safely, and more development in that regard will be happening. And the details of how that has happened, cherry news for those who have been expecting these school kids to come home. 100 of them have now been released by security operatives. Governor Sule, cherry news. 100 of these, almost 300 or so kids have now been released. What do you make of that? It's part of your conversation in Kaduna the security agencies have done their job in this regard and hoping that more of these kids will come home?
Yeah, first I congratulate Mr. President. Since federal government played a key role in this release, I congratulate my dear younger brother, the governor of Niger, and indeed all the parents of these kids. So this indeed is a cheering news, like you had the breaking news. It is a cheering news that we are able to do that. Which means outside whatever people are saying on the streets, there are people who are working day and night to ensure that something happens, because the whole essence of government is to make life easy for other people, to provide security for them, and provide welfare for the people, to make sure that people are free to move wherever they have to move. So government is working and the security agencies are working, but it is not everything that you come and tell, disclose it, in the air that definitely this is what is happening, this is that. So by the grace of God, the orders also will be released, and then this will come to an end. But apart from the release, is to make sure that we don't even allow the children to be kidnapped, and I think that's what we are working on. So we are working on avoiding the kidnap in the first place, not just even working on trying to release those that have been kidnapped. So I think it's cheering news, exactly like what you said, and I congratulate all those that deserve to be congratulated on this cheering news.
Well, Governor Sule, I mean, as a leader in northern Nigeria, and those of us who are from that region of the country are worried about how northern Nigeria has become the theater of everything absurd in terms of security. Abductions, kidnapping, unsafe school situation. If you look at all of these violent activities, terrorist activities, most of it are happening in northern Nigeria. It calls for something, a major intervention, which should worry every leader in northern Nigeria. Does this perplex or does it worry you, some of you who are leaders in northern Nigeria, that this should not be happening in a region that is so blessed, that is capable of blessing the nation, than becoming more of a concern and worry to the entire country?
It is usually very forgetful for us in this part of the world. We usually forget things very, very easy, and we are very fast, actually very quick in pointing accusing fingers at others. This, like you said, is something that borders every governor that you can think of. You needed to see the stress at that meeting, the tension during the meeting, as far as the issues of this insecurity is concerned. Sometimes people raise their voices, because people are angry, people are worried, people are thinking that we are not doing enough. We are accusing ourselves that we are not doing enough. Why should we do enough? What must be done? This and that. That's the kind of meeting we had. So if people are not worried, we can't be talking like that to each other. Now, when you said, kidnapping is northern Nigeria, this and that, let me remind you, and I'm sure you know that I'm an oil and gas person. If you go back to anywhere between 2003, 2004, all the way to around 2009 in this country, no kidnapping was taking place in northern Nigeria, but kidnapping was taking place in all the oil regions. And I remember I was actually a beneficiary, because a company called Tetra Tech, got their workers, it's a company out of Houston, got their workers kidnapped, and one of them, in fact, killed. And they made up their mind that they were not going to come back to Nigeria. So they asked me, to be a consultant for them. That's how I ended up working in Port Harcourt and Trans-Amadi, because they had a lot of investments at ONE, and they had a lot of investments. So I had to go and work for them. And that time, most of the oil workers were being kidnapped. It was a daily activity in the oil region. So kidnapping then was a foreign thing to northern Nigeria, but it was mostly economic kidnapping, because they will kidnap some of the people, and then a lot of them, in most cases, they will kidnap the oil workers, and the oil companies will pay, So it was until, I think, during the Jonathan's administration, it started easing out between 2009 until 2011, and all these contracts were being entered into all of these people, and the issue of resource control and the rest of that. So now kidnapping came back to northern Nigeria. Okay, so this is what is happening, and it will come to an end. But it is not like, and the time it was happening here, people from northern Nigeria were thinking, it's not our problem. It's a problem in the oil region, this and that. And they say, no, it is not the case, because it's in Nigeria. So this one also shall come to pass, because it was mostly, if you look at it, mostly in the northeast, where Boko Haram was doing this, was doing that. Sometimes they would just kidnap people, children, to use them as shield against attacks and things like that. That's where the children in Goza were actually kidnapped, and the rest of that. So it was also a foreign thing to the northwest. So now it moved to the northwest and to the north central. So you have to go through, but it is not something like the leaders are careless. The leaders, most of the time, I get calls in the morning, to say that everything was okay yesterday from the security agencies, or something happened last night when we are doing this and we got them released. Or those are the kinds of things you go through every day as a leader. So anybody who says leaders don't care, or leaders are not doing enough, or leaders are not doing that is actually doesn't either understand or just be mischievous. Because the northern leaders are doing their best, the federal government is doing their best, and now we are saying we can even do more than what we have been doing. And that's the idea. That was the whole essence of the meeting that we had in Kaduna.
Governor Abdullahi Sule, many thanks tonight for your time. But then, before you go, this expressway, I understand the insider information that you secured the federal government's permission to construct that road. For anyone living in some of the satellite towns to Abuja, we're living in Nyanya, Maraba, and that axis. It's about, if I'm not wrong, over 50 kilometers of stretch of roads, which is massive. If that corridor is secured from all of these bottlenecks of traffic and all of that, it will be a very big deal for those who live in that corridor, because Nyanya Maraba has suddenly become an Abuja territory. But what more do we know? Are workers going on site? Are the contractors going on site? We understand that you've secured the federal government permission to construct that road, even with flyovers.
Yeah, well, it's one of the roads, like you mentioned. In fact, if there is any traffic in Nigeria, I don't think there is anywhere where you have that kind of traffic. I live in Lagos, and the Third Mainland Bridge, Apapa, used to be one of the worst traffics. But believe me, living Abuja sometimes, especially on Fridays, I live in Abuja. The moment is 4 o'clock. I live in Abuja to go back to Nasarawa State. That stretch, you can actually spend 3-4 hours sometimes. So we've been looking for two things. Number one is a federal government road. In order for us to go and start working on that road, we needed the permission of the federal government. Number two, more importantly, we needed the money. So because it's a lot of money actually to have the stretch of what we are trying to do. So in order to make it useful, there was no need for us to go and just have a flyover and then move to the next side and have another flyover. It won't solve the problem. Maybe it will just take about 10-15% of the problem, and then you are back to it. So the design that we have, and I participated in actually creating the concept of that design, was that the moment you leave Nyanya and you are entering into that, you start a new flyover with a roundabout under the Abacha Road, for those who understand that road. And then you are not going to come down completely from the flyover. You are just going to come down a little bit and now go on a race highway. So that race highway is what you will continue now until you get to another side at the center of Nasarawa, going to the technology village. So at that moment, you have another flyover. And then it will come down to another race highway. So it's going to be roughly over 2.6 kilometers. That's what we had. Now, we thank God we have the resources. We have the federal government approval. So that's why we did the groundbreaking. And every time I have that, when I mention to people that, well, it's the economic reform at the federal level that put more money in our pockets that gave us this. And I say, thank you, Mr. President, actually, for the reforms. A lot of people don't misunderstand it, thinking that, well, you are just trying to be psychophone or something. No, you are just trying to be realistic by saying that if not for that money, there is no way a state like Nasarawa will jump up and say that we are coughing out. For instance, just the deposit of that road was 19-point-something billion, just the deposit for the road. And we paid that on Thursday last week before we did the Friday work. So that's where we are.
What was the total amount that project will go up, and how long will it take?
It's roughly about 40 billion, but for us in Nasarawa, we try as much as possible to avoid variation. And that's the reason why I usually pay at least 50% of the money to the contractors with an agreement that there will be no variation. Because, sometimes variation alone can be as high as 20, 30, 40% of the work. But I say Nasarawa is not that rich that we can be seeing that variation.
But how long do you think that it will take for the contractors to conclude work on it?
The contractor is asking for 16 to 18 months, but we are working on the contractor to say that every little time you need payment, we'll give you payment to ensure that you finish this work anywhere between 12 to 14 months. Yeah.
Governor Abdullahi Sule, Nasarawa State Governor, thank you so much indeed. Anyone who knows that corridor knows that majority of those who work in Abuja, who live in satellite towns, live around that axis, Maraba axis, and stretch up until the capital of Nasarawa State in Lafayette. But thanks so much indeed for your time to Governor Abdullahi Sule.
There will be a toll gate, but it is only Sheun when he's coming, he will pay the toll gate. Everybody else is free.
I'll try to bypass it and use another road. Let the poor breathe. The president said it. Some of us who don't have the money, let us breathe. Thank you so much indeed, Governor Sule.
Thank you so much.
For the breaking news that we are following for you, Cherry News, 100 school children were kidnapped in the school in St. Mary's Catholic School in Papiri in Niger State have now regained their freedom. We're hoping that the over 200 or so students who were taken from the school with 12 members of staff and the early morning raid about 2 weeks ago will all in total come back home. But when we're going to break, everyone, when we return, I'll be speaking with a pioneer director of media operations at the Defense Headquarters, Major General John Enenche, will be speaking to us about the implications of coup and its trend in the West African region and for us as Nigerians, and also how to down the tension of insecurity in Nigeria. We'll be right back, everyone, after this break. Tonight, we got exclusive information as to the release of 100 of the over 200 school pupils who were kidnapped by gunmen from a Catholic school in Papiri, St. Mary's Catholic School in Papiri, Niger State, where authorities said that attack must have seen about 200 and so students and about a score of members of staff who were taken in an early morning raid. The federal government and security agencies, as of this evening, can confirm to Channels Television exclusively that 100 of the pupils have now been safely rescued. Tonight we'll be speaking with retired Major General John Enenche. Major General John Enenche is the pioneer Director of Defense Media Operations at the Defense Headquarters and a former Commandant Army War College in Nigeria. Yes, he will be explaining the implication of the growing coup trend that we're seeing in parts of Africa and West Africa specifically. What signals for Nigeria's own democratic development and how the region can reinforce stability in the face of rising security pressures. Thanks so much indeed, and it's good to see you again.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Let me get your reaction to the release of these 100 schoolgirls. The recent attack on school, brought about a lot of tension as to what we thought the military at the time. And you remember when you were spokesperson of the DHQ, how schools were attacked and how the military was also helping civil policing to ensure that they had created an operation safe. The Safe School and the Safe School Initiative, where an operation was created in that regard. But what's your take on the release of those school children, 100 of them?
My take is that the government and the security agencies have done a lot. And I believe that Nigerians will be happy for this. Why? Because it was like hope lost. After a long while, a whole chunk of over 300. And then the initial rescue was just about 40. But now 100. I can tell you that it is not easy, whichever way or means was used to get these children out. Of course, they will not tell you the nitty-gritty. But whichever way, like General Musa, the new defense minister, is saying that we must not, no more paying of ransom, we don't know yet. But whichever way, or even if it is true non-kinetics, or just bargaining and talking, or promises, or have to exchange something for another thing, give you free passage, release them. Nobody knows. But on the whole, that lives, 100 lives of these children have been saved, and we are sure that we are getting them. It's a good signal that the security agencies, they are being reactive. Of course, it's not good to be reactive, but what do? They are being reactive, reacting to issues of insecurity, kidnap, and all that has taken place. So my reaction is that we must commend our security agencies, because, like I've said, whichever way, whether I don't know whichever approach they use to secure the release, none of them is easy. So we must commend them.
And there's speculation that how do you easily go into the bandits camp and release 100? There must have been an exchange, cash for something, or there must have. And you've mentioned that whatever way it is. Can you blame Nigerians who are also distrusting the system? We're thinking, this government is playing bandits. Can you blame them?
I will not. I won't blame them. I cannot. Because, like I said, even while I was in active service, you don't know the real, like when there was a time that a committee, the railway,
derailment of
derailment, attack and all that, how were they released? Who knows? And sometimes you don't give out this information because it might be an agreement between you and the bandits. Of course, they had to narrow down to the mediators. Of course, from the media, I discovered that a lot of issues were coming up. Somebody collected money, didn't give the bandits and all whatever and all that. So, but the emphasis, just like if I go back a little, it's just like the Chibok girls, whose location, according to information we got them, was located. But because of collateral damage, they were using them as shield. That was how that one went until we didn't see those girls. The same thing could have happened. That is why sometimes they may not come up openly to tell you the mechanism that they use to bring them out.
How technically difficult is it to be able to, because what we know is that most of these bandits and terrorists use these children. They go into vulnerable spots because they know the military cannot attack them because of collateral damage.
I will tell you, there's a recent example of which a team that I packaged in Benue State, they released those ones on Wednesday last week. 15 of them were kidnapped from Udenu local government in Enugu State, taken to a forest in Orokam, the village where I come from. I will talk much about that later if there's time, if time permits us. And when the local vigilantes and the army operation, I think West Stroke, the police, the two DPOs, they went together to the forest, to the enclave where they kept them. They used them as human shields.
So it's not difficult.
It's difficult
for you to attack them.
For you to attack them.
So those who are saying that, why don't you attack them, flush them out? You are risking the life of these people.
Risking their life, and by the time they pass through their where they have they mounted their scouts, they open fire.
Wow.
I'm just telling you something that happened Tuesday, Wednesday last week.
Wow. In Benue.
In Benue, Orokam, in my village. So it's difficult technically, and those are the reasons why they will not tell you.
So we need to applaud, no matter how this has happened. We need to applaud the security agencies.
Yes, we need to applaud them. First and foremost, for rescuing the people, the valuable people, people who have value for us, than using them as collateral for as casualties.
And these guys are smart. They know what they are doing.
They know.
Yeah.
So that's why it's
dangerous too. Now, the question will be, how did you allow them to move these kids on motorbikes for that long without, no tracking and no technology to be able to? They went for almost an hour or more before they got into the bush. So there are a lot of questions on the mind of Nigerians about...
That is why we need to review our strategy, the overall strategy, technology. For instance, there can be a monitor. I got to know about that much later when I left the service, satellite that on real online time giving you information as they are moving. The moment you send the message, they are monitoring them. But the challenge again is that when you want to introduce this, the money that we call for you, the contractors or whatever, is huge, is scary.
But let me ask you, are you worried with this trend? And I mentioned the countries that are now under military regime, and the recent coup. Guinea-Bissau is another one. There's an attempted one in Benin Republic, which could have happened. And you saw what happened, the agitation within the military, and some boys within the military who are agitated in Benin Republic. Benin Republic is as close to Oyo States in some other...
It's our neighbor here.
Our neighbor here. And the rumors of coup that we heard recently in Nigeria, does it worry you as a retired general?
It doesn't worry me, but it concerns me. It's a concern. I'm just using semantics. When I mean worry, I'm not too worried that it can happen in Nigeria. That one is out of
Is it a possibility?
It's impossible for me. I stand to be corrected. Why? Because of the training, the orientation in Nigeria after the last school in Babangida or Oka school or thereabout. And for about 30 years now, 35, even when we were in MBA, the training and the teaching, the orientation you are giving is that the military government is out of it. Because we were even the first organization to feel it. What about our equipment? What has happened to our equipment today? The equipment we are supposed to be exchanging, military equipment, we exchange, restocking and all, it stopped that time.
Under the military?
Under the military.
So the military is not better off?
Better off at all. At all. We are worse off, and we are still suffering it now. So how will it come? So any person, any military man, sure, the training, the breed of officers we have now, and to some extent the soldiers, they will not. So it's not a worry.
When I was between my primary school and about secondary school, I think that's a period where Nigeria had the most military coup. There was a 13 years where there was almost about 4 or thereabout. Some of them were bloody, some of them were bloodless. But I experienced as a young Nigerian growing up, seeing how military intervention and interregnum into a democratic rule has happened. And I lived most of my growing up also under the military. And I could see what that could mean. But in the implication on our democratic governance, that is what my worry is. I mean, for someone like you who pioneered speaking for the defense, what do you think could have been causing this trend? It seems to be
in West Africa.
In West Africa.
The trend is that their rate of geopolitical development is not as deep as that of Nigeria. What do I mean? I've just told you that the orientation we got and we have now is that democracy is the best. However bad you look at it, is the best both for the military and for the civil populace. But for them, they don't have that teaching. They don't have that belief. And more importantly, it's like they are angry. I want to be careful with my choice of words. Angry with their colonial masters. You realize that most of them are Francophone countries. And now the last one that happened, to the best of my knowledge, was Gambia, where Jammeh became transited to civilian president and all that. But you will hardly see a coup again in an Anglophone country. So it is, would I call it, anger against their Francophone masters. Because if you look at Mali almost severe tests with France. What does that speak to us? So the concern is that particularly for a close neighbor, or close neighbors like Niger and Benin Republic, we have our kinsmen, tribal people, Yoruba, in the Republic of Benin. And you have businessmen from Nigeria who are settled in Cotonou now. So what will happen to them? Businesses will collapse, and then there will be migration. If there's insecurity, a migration of people from Republic of Benin to Nigeria.
And Libya experience is
here. If you talk about Nigeria, the same thing. So it has a lot of economic implication and insecurity implication for us, negatively.
General, give me a moment. But when I come back, is perhaps how we round up is what we need to do, especially political leadership in this country. This agitation, this uprising by civil populists, how we can use it to stem the agitation by the Nigerian people. We'll be wrapping up on that. We'll take another break. I'll be right back, everyone. Join us again. So much. Our concluding moment with Major General John Enenche. So, if we don't want the worst to happen, how do we prevent it? Is it a warning to political leadership in this country?
If we don't want this insecurity to continue, two things for me. Security is very expensive. First and foremost, let us now treat security with all the seriousness that is required. Just like the federal government, the commander-in-chief has declared the state of emergency, which wouldn't have been difficult ordinarily for any president, a politician for that matter, to do that because of the backlash. Having done that, I would want to suggest that the kind of importance funding given to constituency projects should be given. If you don't have a safe constituency, what project are you going to do there? So if our politicians can come and say, decide, let us now fund security. You know, Nigerians have been grumbling and talking about the constituency projects, the money they give to senators, give to House of Rep and all that. Why don't we now secure the constituency first? Before you now say you are going to give them money to go and which development will happen? So indirectly, that money will just be going to pockets. That is one. Then two, we should now go to indigenous homeland security. The model we are using in Ogbadibo local government, particularly in that my area, bordering Nsukka, indigenous homeland security, whereby you now engage the youth. Some of them are ready to stand now and secure their territories against bandits and against whatever. That is what I would suggest. You don't need special recruitment. You don't need special screening. Somebody carrying HIV can be part of that force. Somebody carrying hepatitis can be part of that force, but they will not easily go into the army. No, they want to live where God has put them. So those are my two suggestions. Let them fund them in a manner that they fund, giving money for constituency projects and all that, and secure the area first, the villages first, before you can now talk about developing the localities.
Major General John Enenche is the pioneer director of media operations at the defense headquarters and the former commandant of the Army War College. Thanks so much indeed, and it's good to see you again.
Thank you, Akin.
That's our show for tonight, everyone. Many thanks for watching. I'm Sean Wakimale. God bless Nigeria.